Got it. All right, well, welcome everybody to the June Pram Central Chapter meeting. I know most all of you, but I'm Matt Westerfield. I'm this year's chapter president. We didn't have a meeting last month due to the Pram State virtual conference, but we did have an after-hours social on May 26th at Cultivation Hall in the district at Eastover, which was very well attended. And that was our first in-person event since February of 2020. So if you're able to attend that, we hope you had a great time catching up and networking. And if you weren't able to attend, we are planning to hold another social a little later this year. So stay tuned for that. Now, before we get started, does anyone here in attendance have any announcements they'd like to make to the chapter? Our Pram Central Job Bank has been very active. We've had quite a lot of job postings submitted lately. We post those on our website and on Facebook. And that's a great resource for our members who may be either recruiting or job hunting. And so if there aren't any other announcements, I'll turn it over to Jean Cook, our VP of Membership, to recognize any new members.
Hi, so we've had two new members join since our last meeting. I don't see them here in this meeting today. We have another student who joined from Mississippi College, Brianna Foy, and she's interning at Continental Tire. And Sabrina Turner from the Sirlo Agency, and she's a new professional member. Some of you may know her. So welcome to the two people who just joined.
Awesome.
And now I'll turn it over to Sophie to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, everybody. I'm so glad to see all of you here. I know summer is always kind of an interesting time as far as schedules and all of that. So glad that you guys could be here. And of course, we'll be recording it for everybody else. And I'm going to introduce our speaker, Rod, and I'm so glad to have him here. I'm glad that we're able to kind of utilize the last couple of sessions we have virtually for those that maybe we couldn't get otherwise. So I'm really glad to have Rod here. And this is a little bit about him. So Rod Guajardo is the Director of News and Media Relations at the University of Mississippi, affectionately known as Ole Miss. In this role, he manages media relations efforts for the university. He also leads a team of communications specialists and editors to tell the university's story through earned, shared, and owned media opportunities. Guajardo joined Ole Miss in 2018 after a nearly 10-year stint in the newspaper industry, serving as the editor of the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal in Tupelo and news editor of the Natchez Democrat in Natchez, along with other positions and publications in Alabama and Georgia. He grew up in Birmingham and graduated from Auburn University. And I'm really glad to have him here. He did this presentation for me in May for the College Public Relations Association, and I think that everybody went away with so many takeaways, so I'm really glad to have him here. So while he's speaking, if you have a question or need something repeated, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll try to help along as needed. So feel free to type there, and we'll try to send links and things of that nature so that everybody has a toolkit to take away. So Rod, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thanks, Sophie, for that warm introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. As Sophie said, my name is Rod Guajardo. I'm serve as the Director of News and Media Relations at Ole Miss. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and to share this presentation with you guys. So I'm going to share my screen here. And if I could get just a quick thumbs up that y'all are seeing that screen. All right, very good. So yeah, this presentation, appropriately called Media Relations on a Even Smaller Budget, was developed originally for the college Pram conference, as Sophie mentioned, but I've gone in and sort of made a couple tweaks to hopefully help it apply to all marketing communication disciplines. And really the goal here that I'm going to talk about today is more about tools and not strategies. So to me, strategies are extremely important, obviously, but what I've found is that those are more kind of industry specific. So the strategies that I utilize on a marketing communication standpoint and media relations standpoint from a higher education institution is not the same as even a nonprofit or a for-profit business. So thinking past strategies, because you probably get that a lot from your industry specific conferences. What can I help you and share with you today that you can sort of take away and make an immediate impact in what you do. And so what I'm going to talk about specifically today are a couple of tools and platforms and services that you can start using today as a takeaway and really implement in the great work that you're already doing. And so, that's the best conferences and presentations and webinars, other professional developments I've attended are the ones that you walk away from with something you can do like that day as soon as you leave to help increase what you're doing, your output or your input or whatever it is. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do today, is talk more about tools and platforms that are free or cost very little, because I know, going back to the even smaller budget, that we're all wearing so many more hats these days, no matter what you do. So again, these are kind of based around some things you could start doing today without needing a contract or even a procurement card to get rolling. And so what I want to talk about first, just sort of kind of set the stage for everybody, is this concept of a peso model. And so if you're familiar with the peso model, it comes out of the blog called Spin Sucks. I apologize for the name. Obviously, I didn't choose that one, but it's the brainchild of a marketer named Jeannie Dietrich, who came up with this system many years ago. And I'm a big process driven person, so I really like how this structure works, and it can work for offices really in whatever discipline you're using. And so the concept here is pretty simple, in that it breaks up the concept of paid media, earned media, shared media, and owned media, and then what all those things mean, but then how specifically you can work together to create kind of an integrated approach within your office. And so for the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to talk about the ESO model, patent pending. Still, it's not a copyright trait there. But I don't do a whole lot of the paid stuff on my end. That's more on the marketing driven side. But there are certain tools that I'm going to talk about that will work well with the paid side, if that's specifically what you focus on. And our tornado sirens are going off, test sirens, I should say. So if you hear that in the background, that's what that is. But I'm going to talk about each of these areas and then some tools within those. So I just kind of wanted to set the stage and explain that a little bit. But if you're not familiar with it, definitely encourage you to check out the Spin Sucks blog. They have a great newsletter and website. They actually have a Slack channel too that's really good. It's a nice community that you can get involved with of marketing communications professionals across the country who just chime in and looking for resources and feedback whenever they can get them. So. But yeah, Sophie mentioned, if you have questions as we go, I do have a lot of slides, so I'm going to try and get through it, but I got the chat pulled up here, and Sophie will help me if there's something along the way. Feel free to interrupt. I definitely don't mind stopping and talking about something while it's fresh on everybody's mind, but I'll also leave some time for questions at the end. So let's jump in. I'm going to start with the earned media side of things. So, from a very high level, earned media is what you would typically consider PR, publicity specific to media outlets, right? So it's the media that you earned through either a relationship with a reporter, producer, editor, or have a hit, the kind of old school terminology, a media hit in a publication, whether that's a newspaper, a TV station, or a radio broadcast. And so let's talk about a couple of ways that you can use some tools on your earned media distribution, right? So you have your story, your press release, your news release, your announcement, whatever it is that might be, and you want to get it out to media. So a couple of easy ways you can do that. Spark is an email client for Apple, iOS, and Android. There is a PC version in the works. But what a couple really neat things that this allows you to do, so it serves very similarly to like Outlook or Apple Mail, but it has a couple cool features that I really like built into it that make it much more Marcom friendly. You can create email templates, include things like your boilerplate, your social icons, everything that sort of helps brand your organization one time. And so you don't have to keep repeating that every single time. You can also schedule emails. I know Outlook has this feature, but it's kind of wonky sometimes. So this a great way to sort of plan out media distribution in advance. Maybe if you're going to be at Orange Beach at a condo and you want to leave some things scheduled to go, you can use Spark to help you do that. If you're using the Gmail, or I think they just rebranded it right to Google Workspace, you can use the Boomerang Gmail plugin. A couple of similar things there. You'll notice you can do some scheduling through it. You can also create reminders, which is pretty cool. So you send an email to a reporter and then say, remind me in 2 days to follow up if I haven't heard back from this person. And so the plugin will automatically ding you in 2 days and say, hey, you haven't heard back from so-and-so at the Clarion Ledger, send them a follow-up email. You also get read receipts and click tracking, which no other sort of integrated email client can give you. So, if you're trying to track your pitches and who's responding to the stuff that you're sending out to media outlets, that's a great way to do that. There is a free plan for this one, gets you about 10 emails a month. I know that that's not a lot if you're a high output type of organization, but they also have a very reasonable plan starting at $5 a month, which gets you a few more emails a month and a couple other features. So I should have prefaced all this also by saying there are some great paid tools out there that we use in our office. Cision, Meltwater, a couple of these sort of big names in both media distribution and monitoring. I'm happy to talk about those too after if y'all have questions or have sort of heard about them but don't know how they work. But again, I sort of wanted to use this time to show you some free stuff, the stuff that you could start using today on a limited budget. So I'll just kind of put a pin in that. If you want to come back to anything for a more robust program that can do a little bit more, definitely let me know, and I can send along a couple of examples and references there. So let's talk about the monitoring side, right? So you've distributed, you made your calls, you made your pitches, you push stuff out. Let's talk about how you're going to monitor your media hits or your earned media success. So I'm going to walk through a couple of these examples here and show you what these actually look like. But these are some that you can start using again today with either a free account or just a quick setup that will start hopefully being beneficial to you. I should also mention I will send this deck out, or I'll send it to Sophie and she can distribute it. So don't feel like you have to take frantic notes as we go, and you can have all these URLs handy after the fact. So let's jump in and talk about Mention. So mention.com covers news sites as well as social networks like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They really pride themselves on kind of being a comprehensive tool. There is a free plan, which includes one alert. So if you want to set like a very high level alert for your entire organization, you can do that and get 250 monthly mentions. So if you're not in the media a lot, that's pretty good, and you'll probably do well with that. But if you need more either searches, so you want like a specific initiative or a plan you're doing, and then you want more mentions, there are some pretty reasonable prices starting at $29 a month. If you use Slack, you can integrate mentions to a Slack channel, which I think is fantastic. So I'm all about integrating tools and having a one-stop shop. So you can actually get those mentions plugged into a specific Slack feed, and they'll just pop up there live, or you can set it to come sort of at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day based on how you work in your office. And so this is what Mention looks like. I just set up a free account real quick. I use the University of Mississippi or Ole Miss using a Boolean search term there. And so this is what it looks like. Very similar to like a Outlook inbox. You can see on the left, those are all the media hits. And then you click one and it shows you the example of where you were hit on the right there. It gives you a little preview window. I should note this picks up Reddit, as you can see there, which is a growing social media platform. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of really taken off, not on TikTok level in terms of reaching the younger generation, but it is quickly becoming sort of a big one that most marketing communication folks are dying to be on in any way. So it's a big plus. Some monitoring services don't pick up Reddit, so that's nice that Mention does. Newsmeter is another one. So newsmeter.com, it allows you to do a single user and a single keyword before you actually have to jump to a paid package. Super easy setup. Literally within a minute or two, you can get going. And then you can search past data. So with some of these free services, it'll only start at the minute you create your account or you start your search. With what I really like about Newsmeter is you can still go back the second you create your account and look, last week or 2 weeks or a month before to get all your media mentions that way. And then you can have notifications delivered to your email if you do want to create a free account. But you can go and log on newsmeter.com and do a search without actually creating an account. And this is what that one looks like. So you see the media hits there on the left. These are where we were mentioned, and then it gives you a nice little quick breakdown there. So you get how many outlets published it, the estimated read count, which could be like a aggregate viewership data point there. And then your reached ad value. So if you were to place this ad, this type of coverage in a paid publication, you know, what would that cost you? So some nice data points there that you can look at. Talkwalker is one that's been around for a while, so you might have heard of this one. It does a really good job with Twitter specifically, but also news sites, blogs, forums, and other websites. Very similar to a Google Alert, which we'll talk about in a second, but it consolidates your mentions. You can do it either in real time or sort of a roundup daily or weekly. And it's a very simple and free tool that picks up a lot of good coverage there. So if you're not using Talkwalker, I would definitely use it. I use both. So in addition to Cision, which is our paid monitoring and distribution tool, I have a Google Alert and a Talkwalker alert all set up. So if you haven't noticed by now, I really like to be in the loop when we're mentioned in media outlets. And so there are some that find things that nobody else finds. And you know, I'd rather get 3 different alerts and know that it's there than have something slip through the cracks. And obviously the tried and true method, you know, a Google Alert is the classic way to go if you just want something quick and easy. You do have to have a Google account. Obviously, that is required to set one up. But these days, that doesn't take very long at all. And the other thing I tell people is, you know, don't be afraid to go to your old friend google.com and just do a keyword search with a couple of tweaks to what you might normally search there. So these are 2 that I use pretty often. It's just a matter of how you search things, right? That's how Google works. So you see in the parentheses, I have University of Mississippi, and then I have -site, and then our website. So this is our news hub website where we publish all our news releases. And so what this is going to tell Google is, hey, look for everything that's not on this website that mentions the University of Mississippi. So that's immediately going to strip out anything that we've produced and only give me, you know, our earned media hits that are out there in the world right now. And same thing if you're looking for reporters to reach out to, a great easy Google search there. Use the power of LinkedIn. So we're going to tell Google only look on linkedin.com and utilize these search terms. So we're going to put journalist, you can put editor, reporter, producer, whatever it is, and then the name of the publication you're trying to reach. So Clarion Ledger, WJTV, whatever it might be. And then it'll populate a list from there in your search terms of all the people that have those tags on their profile. And then from there, you can either send them a LinkedIn message, or a lot of times they'll have their emails linked in or go to their staff page on the website. So great, easy way if you're trying to track down reporters or people, you know, who can give you an earned media hit, how to do that. So let's talk a little bit about shared media. This is obviously a space that I know all of us deal with either personally or professionally, and that's obviously, you know, social media, right? So your classic Facebook, Twitter, Instagrams, but also things like Instagram stories and Facebook Live and sort of the next level TikTok and everything else. So how are you tracking your results on your shared media, what you're pushing out, what other people are saying about you? So a couple of things I just mentioned for earned media actually work for shared media very well as well. So mentioned Newsmeter, Talkwalker alerts, and TweetDeck. TweetDeck is the one I'm going to talk about here in a second, but the first 3 we already talked about from a sort of traditional media monitoring standpoint, can also work very well for social. So I think I mentioned Newsmeter tracks Reddit, Talkwalker does a great job of scrubbing Twitter. So all these things that you can set up to customize and go directly to your inbox to track both your earned and shared media hits there. TweetDeck is another one I'm a huge fan of, and I know it's been around forever, so you might have already heard of it or actually use it, but there are a lot of ways that you can sort of use some additional features within TweetDeck to really kind of step up your game. So TweetDeck is actually owned by Twitter. They bought it out a couple years ago, and the concept is that it creates these dashboards with of tweets with either keywords or certain accounts or users or even lists that you create on your own. You can link multiple accounts to TweetDeck. So if you have a personal account and a business account, or your business has multiple Twitter accounts, you can link them all through there. And one of the things I think is not utilized enough within TweetDeck is the advanced search feature. So you can really start creating some very targeted monitoring columns for your specific institution, a topic, an issue, anything like that. And then obviously you can create alerts to ensure you're always aware of anytime you're being mentioned to a specific column. So this is an example of my tweet deck. Took a couple weeks ago. As you can see, it extends to the right about 30 times. So I have all kinds of searches and users and advanced searches built out to really make this tool work best for me and what I need. But just to give you a quick overview, so that first column is my personal Twitter feed, so all the people I follow. The second one is our institutional account, so that's at Ole Miss. The third one is our newsroom account, so that's at Ole Miss News. And then I have a couple of just high-level search terms, so University of Mississippi and Ole Miss, to help me keep track of what's being, just when we're getting either tagged or mentioned or spoken about on social media. And again, I don't manage our social media accounts. Our social media team uses Sprout, which is a paid service that does very well for scheduling tweets and monitoring real time what's going on. But from a media relations standpoint, you got to know when either reporters, outlets, or just the general public are talking about you, and how that's going to impact, especially in a crisis communication situation, what you're putting out, how you're talking about yourself, and the issue at hand. All right, I'm going to take a break here for a second before we get into owned media, because I see we have a question in the chat here. Any suggestions? Yeah, okay, so this is a great question. As you all know, Mississippi can be a little bit of a media poor state, and I say that not in a bad way, but we have pockets of very highly active media outlets. So Jackson, Tupelo, and the coast obviously have very robust both TV broadcast and online presence there. But yeah, there's a swath in between there of your good old classic, weekly or even twice a week papers that are still doing a lot of good work and still matter a lot to your C-suite or your folks in the office. So I do know there's a paid service that has bid with us similar to Cision. It's called Burrell's. They're based out of New York, and they pride themselves on this very thing. So they're, in addition to tracking online hits, they actually have somebody in their office in New York City, if you contract with them, who goes through, I can't remember the name of the company they partner with, but they'll essentially get all your print publications for your state or specific counties, if you tell them, and go through those every morning for you, almost like a clipping service, but it's integrated within an also very robust online monitoring service. And from what I can remember from their bid, it was a very affordable service. So definitely check that out if you're interested. We also use a traditional clipping service, Magnolia Clipping. It's based out of Mississippi, and they do great work. But yeah, there's a little bit of lag time in the turnaround. So I don't really have any other specific advice there other than to say, just try a couple things and see what works for you. And yeah, just cross your fingers and hope they get a more robust digital presence. A lot of those papers have started doing an e-edition, whether it's just an interactive one or just the upload of their PDFs that they send to the press. So definitely, if you can get a subscription that way and just do some of that monitoring yourself, maybe once a week, that could be a good option. Twitter recently changed the ability to post to multiple accounts at once. Interesting. Okay, I did not know that. Yeah, I guess that could change how folks use TweetDeck there. So yeah, Burrell's, thank you for that link, Sophie. Some good stuff there. I have a contact if you want some more information or struggling to find what you need on their website, let me know. I met a gentleman from that organization at a conference in DC a couple years ago, and we've kept in touch. So he would be a great resource for anybody that wants a little bit more information. All right, so let's talk about owned media. And this might not necessarily apply to everybody in the room, so I'll just preface that. If you want to check out for a second, that's fine too. But I'm going to try and hit as much of this as I can, because it does touch on the content you produce. So if you have a newsroom type of site where you're producing blogs or stories or news releases about your organization, but also just general metrics and data about your website visits. So typically owned media will only talk about the stuff you produce, your stories and your blogs, but I'm going to expand a little bit to try and hit everybody in the room and also talk about how you're looking at who's coming to your site, what they're looking at, and then how you're using that to make data-driven decisions within your marketing efforts. The first thing I will warn you is that I am a huge data nerd, and so I'm a big believer in Google Analytics and everything they do. So this next little bit, it's going to get a little nerdy, so I apologize there. But if you're not using Google Analytics, you really need to be. And this comes into tracking not only your content, so the stuff that you're putting out on your News Hub website, your blog posts, whatever it might be, but also just your general traffic to your website. So it's as easy as including tracking codes across all your website, and Google does the rest. It's a completely free tool that really helps you understand who's coming to your website, how people are getting to you. That's another huge part that a lot of people don't realize. So are they coming to you from a social media platform, or are they coming to you from an organic Google search, right? Don't use your gut and say, well, I think they're coming to me because we posted this, pretty picture on Facebook, and then we got a bunch of hits to our website. You need to drill down into the data and better understand how exactly people are getting to you, and then divert your marketing driven decisions to that area, whether that be resources, time, money, or energy. And the beauty of it is that Google does this all automatically in the background for you, and then create some really nice customized reports and visuals, which I'll talk about in a fairly new feature that Google has called Data Studio, that really lets you automate a lot of this if you just put some time in on the front end. And so here's my nerdiest slide of the day. In order to do this, you must learn the ways of the data. So these are what I consider are kind of metric measurement musts. So at a bare minimum, you should be looking at these things, if not every day, at least once a week for your organization. So that's users, both new and returning to your website, or blog posts or stories, page views, top pages visited, average time on page, bounce rate, the device breakdown, and users by time of day. So we're gonna talk about each of these a little bit more as we move along. So let's talk about all the all pages breakdown, right? So this is going to tell you who, what people came to your pages. The pages that people visited the most. There we go, on your website. So in this case, you'll see an example from our news hub, which is Ole Miss News, or news.olemiss.edu. And so we look at this from a team. I look at it every day. We look at it from a team standpoint, try to do it weekly, and then sort of output some reports from there. But from a basic minimum standpoint, right, you need to understand who's coming to you and what they're looking at when they get to you. So we use this to talk to our writers about what's working, what's not working. Obviously, there's going to be some other components here. We're not just going to say this story got 1,000 views and this one got 10, so we need to write more of these stories that are getting 1,000 views. And a lot of newsrooms started doing that about 5-10 years ago, and they quickly had to kind of retract their approach, because it is about data, but it's also understanding what goes into that data. And sometimes the page view is not all what you need to look at. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but here's how you get to it. If you never used Google Analytics before, I'm going to give you the shortcuts to get there. So you go to behavior, site content, and all pages. And I know if you've never used analytics, that doesn't make a lick of sense, but if you have and you're just not familiar with how to get there, that's the quick and easy way to do that. The source and medium, this is what we talked about a second ago. So how do you know where folks are coming to you from, right? Did you think you posted a nice picture on Facebook and that's why you got some extra traffic to your site? Or is it really that your search terms increased on Google and more people were typing in the name of your organization and getting to you that way? Again, this needs to be part of your marketing driven decisions, whether it's budget or time and energy and resources. So one of the things we found for this report I produced here, and I blocked out some of the numbers just to, in full transparency there. But one of the things we looked at, we thought that Facebook was our biggest referral for that week because we had put out a lot of good stories on Facebook. And, it turned out that it was through a Google organic search that people had been typing in either Ole Miss news or a specific story that we had published. So they were getting to us eventually, which is great. We want the traffic, but they weren't getting to us in the way that we initially thought they were. And so that sort of helped us rethink our approach the following week when we were putting out more stories about what we're pushing and where we're pushing it out. Demographics, I know this can be a little weird in the time of big data, but helping understand who's coming to your website and what those people look like can definitely understand how you need to tailor your content and your marketing message. And so I will say Google is very upfront and honest about this. They don't do this with a lot of stuff, but they are very upfront with their demographic data to say this does not capture 100% of your users. And so the long and short answer there is that a user has to agree to give up this information to other companies to track it, right? So 100% of your users are not going to agree to that, and that's fine. But in this case, we have 22% of our users represented here. And so I'm not going to make, a complete decision based on this, but it's interesting to know that 22% of our users are majority female and in the age range of 25 to 34, right? So that tells me that in this particular week, we had more probably young alumni, young professionals, community members than we had prospective students or current students visiting our website. And so how do we use that information to shape the content that we're putting out for that particular time of the year or based in our sort of editorial calendar? This is probably the second nerdiest slide in the deck. This is our user flow chart. So the behavior flow is certainly not the most important thing you need to look at, but it's very interesting to me and helps you understand how a user experiences your website. And so what this behavior flow chart looks at is where did the user start, and then where did they go next, and where did they go third, and then where did you lose them along the way, right? So here we have 110,000 users came to our website. That forward slash is our homepage. So they came to us on our homepage, probably through an organic social Google search. And then from there, they went to this place. And then from there, they went to this place. And then the red mark that you see there, the down arrow, that's where they bounced and left our website completely. So I'm going to look at this and say, we don't have enough people going to our homepage, to a story page, or to a landing page. So we really need to get some more engaging content on our homepage because we're losing X number of people, right? But then once they get there, they're actually sticking around and going to 2 or 3 other stories, which is great. So our bounce rate is smaller on those between those first and second interactions. And this slide does not do it justice. It's really cool when you get in there because you can actually hover over every area and it gives you a little pop out with the specific data points for each of these areas. So very cool, but nerdy stuff there. And the last thing I want to talk about, Google Data Studio. I did want to hit on this comment in the chat because it's absolutely right. Time on page is definitely a must. That's huge right now in newsrooms and specifically for Marcom kind of news hubs too. Early on, it was this sort of vanity metric of page views. Everybody just wanted the most page views possible, and that was the big shiny number you looked at. Now we're getting into what I consider more of a quality versus quantity metric, and that's absolutely the time on page. So how long are people engaging with your stories? If it's 60 seconds or less, you're not giving them enough information, or maybe the user experience isn't great, and so they're bouncing way too quickly. Right now we're seeing anywhere from 1:30 to 3:30 on an average story that we push out on our website, which is fantastic because to me, that means they're reading it all the way through. Hopefully they're clicking on another story. We're doing kind of everything right to keep people engaged and at least get them through the story to understand our kind of key points throughout it. So definitely a huge believer in time on page, and that's a great metric to be looking at right now for engagement and more of a true metric, I think, overall. Okay, last thing is Data Studio. So this is a fairly new tool that Google has announced, but it integrates with your Google Analytics. And what it does is it allows you to turn your data into these very nice, easy to read, easy to share, and fully customizable dashboards and reports. So it uses a drag and drop editor. You can include things like bar graphs and pie charts and geomaps and all kinds of stuff there. You can make it interactive with viewer filters and date range controls, which I'll show you an example here in a second of why I think that's the coolest part of all this, because it helps you automate your data analytics sharing so very easily. You can include things like links and clickable images to create product catalogs, video libraries. And the best thing is that you can brand it with your own individual logos or text or images, so it feels like something your organization is producing and not something that you went and copied from Google that you have no control over whatsoever. And then, yeah, if you want to take a next step, you can build in your themes and your colors and everything else to really help it make it look and feel like yours. The other thing I don't have a bullet point for here, but I talked about the paid part of Peso early on. This connects directly to any paid campaigns that you're using through Google. So AdWords or anything like that, you can have a separate, so sort of, think about it from a own standpoint. You're going to track your website and your clicks and your views, but then you can also tack on any paid work that you're doing through Google and get this very nice comprehensive report there. And again, if I didn't mention it, it is free, so that's a huge perk here. The other benefit is that Google does a great job of sharing templates that you can literally plug and play in today if you wanted to. And so they have something called the Creator Studio, and people go in there and upload their templates that they've spent hours and hours creating, so you don't have to. And that's actually what I did in full transparency. I went and found a report that I really liked. I grabbed it on there and I customized it for our team. So here's two that I'm going to show you real quick. And I hope this does not work. I'm going to pop out of my presentation here and show you all these, just so you can kind of see an example of what this looks like. If my internet will cooperate. There we go. So this is a dashboard that was built all about showing kind of user behavior on this. So this is all just Google data, obviously not specific to our website here. But as you can see, there's some really nice tables and charts. They're all interactive. You get some page view numbers here, average time on page, bounce rate, and then you have some more very nice visual elements here. And so this person gave you a couple things to look at. Load time, I know is extremely important if you're in a service field or need people to get to information quickly, and a couple of things. But let me show you the really cool thing and why this is, I think, one of the most underrated Google tools right now. So let's say I wanted to automate this report to, we were just looking at a month. I want to look at it from year to date. I go into this date range field, I click apply, Google does its thing, and boom, all these fields that you've incorporated into the template the first time you built it will get automated to the data that you're looking for immediately. So you don't have to go in and build a new dashboard or a new template for last month or last quarter or last year. It's all done right here automatically. So I think this is just super cool from a data standpoint. And then you can get even more in the weeds if you want, right? So you can set regions, you can set specific channels if you do have paid search and other things here, even search by device. So a lot of the different templates will have these built in for different things. And then last thing, I'll show you this one, very similar, but this is one built around audience specifically. So the other one was behavior. This is audience driven, just so you can kind of see a different example. This one's going to focus more on kind of users and how they got to you. So this is kind of audience at a glance, total sessions, bounce rate, whether they're new or returning visitor, where they came to you from, so their country breakdown. But you can see here, all this stuff is interactive and engageable. So I'm clicking here, looking at this, how many users from Canada visited this website. You can click there and get some breakdown data specifically there, and then some nice chat graphs and other charts there. So again, super cool, probably very nerdy for this group, but I hope that was okay for me to dive off there. And yeah, so that's everything I had. I hope there are some takeaways there that will work for your organization. Again, I tried to cover a couple of different tools, mainly free, but a couple that might have some reasonable entry-level plans that you can use. If if you want to talk more about any of those or anything else, again, the sort of higher tier platforms that do cost more, happy to talk about those. There's my email right there. It's just rod@olemiss.edu. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's rodg_um. So, Sophie, I think that's it. Hope I didn't put anybody to sleep.
No, I think
No,
it's
not at all.
fantastic. Thank you, Rod. I think a lot, as Jan says, it's like a Cliff Notes on data, which is, I think, perfect compliment for what we were trying to do with this presentation. So appreciate it. And Rod, of course, will send the deck to me, so we'll send that out. I know there's a lot you probably want to marinate over after this and may start thinking about, and you might try one and decide that doesn't work for you, and you might want to try something else. And I think that's something to encourage. Is everyone has different needs, and will have different ways of needing to modify any of these platforms. And that's the great thing about this presentation is you can pick and choose what works for you. And I have to give a good shout out. Rod and I are in the Integrated Marketing Communications Master's Program at Ole Miss, and so we're big fans of the PESO model over in IMC. That's a great segue. I've been asked by a couple of board members if I might present on IMC later this fall. So good segue into kind of our general thinking of more of an integrated approach overall. So that'll whet your appetite for that for later this fall. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And looking through the chat, if anybody has any questions about anything specifically, we have a few minutes if there's anything pressing for anyone. Rod, you and I have talked, I know especially in higher ed, Reddit is something that we're always really focusing on and thinking about the conversation there. Are there any platforms or places that have really surprised you over the last couple of years? You are such in an interesting position because you were in newspapers for so long and then came over to the dark side with us over in Marcom. Is there anything that has been interesting over the past couple of years between the two? And because newspapers also are watching data and watching how news performs, what are you seeing as the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Twitter is, I think will always be the sort of newsy journo publication, social media of choice. It's just so perfect for real-time information and engagement and feedback. So there's a good reason why journalists love it so much. But I've been very interested in the migration of journalists, not necessarily leaving one, but using Reddit more. So you talked about Reddit specifically. There are so many journalists I see. So I've been a Reddit user for years. And so I was familiar with the platform when it was kind of, just a bunch of nerds doing weird stuff on there. And then sort of its migration to the point now where brands are starting to engage more with Reddit, both through paid and organic sort of interactions. But specifically, the thing I've been interested in over the years is how many more journalists are on Reddit, and the features that I think Reddit does very well. The main one being the AMA, which is the Ask Me Anything feature. So if you're not familiar with that, these sort of subreddits, which are like communities within the social media platform, they will welcome experts to come in based on their subject. So one could be geology or, whatever it might be. And they will just have an expert on. And the whole point is to allow fellow Reddit users to literally ask them anything. And so that's really taken off first with celebrities. So you had a lot of, actors and producers and directors or CEO type of figures doing that. But now it's been interesting to watch now that that sort of newness has faded, a lot of universities are trying to start putting their faculty experts out there in an AMA and even presidents and chancellors and CEOs. So I think, it's scary because you could literally be asked anything, and, nothing saying you have to answer a question that you're asked, but it does put you in a little bit more of a vulnerable position. But to me, there's no better like organic social media engagement than that, right? You're getting an answer, you're getting a question, you're answering it, you're moving on, blah, blah, blah. And you're really able to see what people are saying and thinking about you. Whereas Twitter, there's certainly a lot of that, but sometimes it can be a little bit more at a higher level, where Reddit, I think, is really sort of, down, boots on the ground type of people. So I've been very interested in that. I'm also, I hate to say it, but I'm a TikTok user. My wife got me on TikTok last year, and I'm addicted to it. So I've been fascinated with its growth. I think they've done a very good job of overcoming a lot of the privacy issues that it once had around this time last year. That, at one time, everybody thought the platform was just going to shutter completely, and really starting to allow more brands to engage with it in a more organic way. So it's not all paid ads like Facebook is, like 1 every 4 posts is an ad. I think TikTok has found a good way to allow brands to live in that space, but not do it like in your face, buy this thing right here and now. And so, yeah, I'll be very interested to see how TikTok continues to grow and how that sort of evolves.
Yeah, and one thing to note about a Reddit, I think that's important that you talked about the human factor of Reddit, because not a brand shouldn't just insert themselves as a brand. That's actually widely panned by Reddit users, but it's about how can your brand integrate in a human way. And faculty experts, for example, or having someone high level in your organization interact in an authentic way is important, and would be the way that maybe you could be a Trojan horse, so to speak, for your brand on Reddit.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rod? This is a lot to absorb. I thought I was doing a lot over here, and now I realize there's so much more I need to be doing. Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't mean to overwhelm folks. I know it's a lot to take in, and you don't have to do all of it. But again, my goal was to kind of let you, give you a buffet a la carte, and let you sort of pick and choose what you could do, and maybe what you can do now, what you can do in a couple months. So hopefully it's all helpful.
Yeah, it's not really overwhelming. It's in that sense, because it's all of these tools, the way you explain them, seem very accessible, and user friendly. But gosh, yeah, and I think everybody will be anxiously expecting to get their hands on these slides, Rod. So thank you for making those available.
Absolutely, glad to do it.
All right.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. As we wrap up here, our July meeting will be on the 28th, and that will be a Zoom meeting. And that may well be our last Zoom virtual chapter meeting, because in August we are going to an in-person meeting, but I think we're not quite ready to announce those details. So we'll leave you guessing for the moment. And I think that's really all I have at the moment. Mara Hartman, our career development coordinator, couldn't join us today, but she wanted to remind folks that if you're interested in pursuing your APR, she's the person to reach out to. So yeah, make sure, if you think about it, now is a good time to take advantage of that. So does anybody have anything else? All right, then we'll go ahead and wrap up, and we'll have a few extra minutes before 1 o'clock meetings begin. So y'all have a great rest of the week, and yeah, I'll see you all soon.